Hello, everyone. Yet once again, it's another day of fresh grace and mercy. This is the Guilt, Grace, Gratitude podcast, sponsored by Logos Bible Software, where we bridge the gap to Reformed Christian theology for your listening pleasure. Today, we're doing a book club episode, and we have Chad and Emily Van Dixhoorn both on the show today. They co-wrote a book together, and they are married to each other, and their book that they co-wrote together is Gospel Shaped Marriage: Grace for Sinners to Love Like Saints, and it's published by our good friends at Crossway. So if you go to our show notes and you click the Crossway link, it'll take you directly the link to get this book for yourself. So please do that. And this episode will hopefully kind of whet you guys the appetite to get the book and answer some questions and explain how marriage is got a gospel focus to it. And some other reminders for show notes: there's a link to find the closest Reformed churches near your area. So click that link and type in your zip code, and you'll find the closest Reformed denominations near you. And then there's also some information on how to contact us for any communication, comments, questions, anything like that. We are pretty active on social media, including Twitter and Instagram. Both the handles are the same there. It's at guiltgracepod. And then our email is guiltgracepod@gmail.com. And then we are on YouTube. These conversations are automatically put on YouTube with the video. So if that's more your thing, then we got you there. Just type in Guilt, Grace, Gratitude Podcast, hit subscribe, and you could get all the doctrinal seasonal episodes, as well as our book club episodes that we do, as well as much more. And then there's also information about how to become a bridge builder. So you heard me mention Logos Bible Software. They are our largest or main sponsor. And then halfway through the show, you'll hear some words from some of our other sponsors. And if you're just an individual, you can also become a bridge builder. You can hit that Patreon link and see the different levels of giving. It just helps our show grow and move forward and keep it going, as we just hit our 2-year anniversary of our show. So we really want to keep this going, and we enjoy doing it, and we love giving it out to the world for free. So anything else that I forgot, I'm sure we'll mention throughout the show, but I'll let Peter further introduce our married couple here today to help us on the conversation of marriage, both Chad and Emily Van Dixhoorn.
Yeah. So I'll give a brief little bio. This is our second married couple we've had on together. The first married couple on one screen. We've had another married couple on 2 separate screens and 2 separate floors and 2 separate rooms. So this is fitting. It's a conversation on marriage when the same screen. But Chad Van Dixhoorn is professor of church history at Westminster Theological Seminary and former pastor in the UK and in Virginia. And Emily Van Dixhoorn is his wife and a stay-at-home mom who leads and loves Bible studies and women's retreats. But it's a pleasure having both of you on for the same show to talk about marriage.
Thank you.
Thanks. It's good to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. So we usually ask a question about yourselves, background, and currently do. And so I have that question on the email link that we've been going back and forth on. But what I want to ask first, since this is on marriage, is how did you two meet?
At seminary. And I think almost more interesting than how we met was the first time we went out. I called Chad up, and he wasn't home. So I asked his roommate, answered the phone, and said, "Oh, Chad, he's not home right now, but he's going to the symphony tonight, and he's got extra tickets. Do you want to go?" And I was thinking, Chad, I didn't know him that well, but he didn't look like he went to the symphony very much. And I'm like, "Oh, but sure. Yeah, I'd love to." So Chad got home, and his roommate said, "Hey, Chad, you're going to the symphony tonight with Emily. You better get some tickets."
So your roommate asked her on the first date.
Yeah.
It was a group date. It was a large group of us who went down there together. But we were there. We were at the symphony.
We expanded the circle.
That's good.
But how did we get to know each other? It was taking church history together.
Yeah, I hate study groups. I've never had a study group. When Emily said, "Oh, can we do a study group together?" I said,
"I like study groups."
Yeah, that'd be a great idea. So,
That's right. Yeah, I like it. So you guys went to Westminster together, but maybe just to describe a little bit more, kind of about each of yourselves independently before you met and after you met. So maybe Emily, we'll start with you. A little bit about yourself.
We come from very different backgrounds, but one clear difference is that he's from a Christian family and I'm from a non-Christian family. Became a Christian when I was 25. I did not have a lot of Bible knowledge. I was in acting school at the time. I ended up dropping out of acting school because I just really wanted to study the Bible, that I wanted to study God's word, and I wanted him to write the script of my life. And I had a lot of catch up to do. So I started going to 9 Bible studies or sort of Bible events a week. And then I realized, you know what, I really need a little more order to this. I had the opportunity to go to seminary. So I went there, and that's where I met him. And I really enjoyed studying the Bible too. It's been wonderful.
And I grew up in a church-going and eventually a Christian home in a Reformed context. Through a variety of events, we drifted into the OPC, the Orthodox Presbyterian Church. And after college, after my first attempt at college, working, I felt the Lord calling me to ministry, went and got a degree, and then went to the closest Reformed seminary, which was Westminster Seminary in Philadelphia.
Gotcha.
Only a 10-hour drive.
Just a 10-hour drive.
It's because there's not that many Reformed seminaries out there, so you have to.
Well, that's right. So yeah, it was a reasonable drive. I did not commute. In my second year, Emily arrived on campus. I noticed her immediately. And if it wasn't successful, it would have been called stalking. So I'm glad it turned into.
But there is an interesting story, though, when we were pretty newly married, and we said we were going to meet in the library. And so I was a rare event. I was actually there first, and I was just sitting waiting for him. Meanwhile, he walks in, and what?
So I needed new glasses, but I saw this really cute girl, and I'm thinking,
out of the corner of your eye, right?
Out of the corner of my eye, I'm thinking, there's a gorgeous woman, but focus, Chad. Go find your wife. And eventually, I'm like, oh, that is my wife.
You waited like 5 minutes, like sitting.
I waited way too long. So yeah, it was.
Yeah, that was. I didn't want to look at you.
I was just trying to
appreciate.
I was trying to stay undistracted.
Very sweet, and I felt honored. Both
awesome.
That he thought I was cute, and that he
was trying to have eyes just for you rather than that.
Yeah,
kind of looks
whatever that was in the corner of your eye. Yeah, exactly. Awesome.
Well, and then you wanted to know afterwards, just briefly.
Yeah.
Went from Westminster, 7 years in Cambridge, England, which ended up in a couple of years pastoring at the end. We went over with one child, came back with 4 children, and the Lord gave us.
Just found them in the streets in Cambridge.
Yeah. Yeah. And then one more gift in Virginia. So we're parents of 5. And I guess in a few weeks' time, it'll be 22, 20, 18, 16. And then late October, our 10-year-old turns 11, the Lord willing.
Nice.
So.
And how many years have you guys been married?
24 as of Monday.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. So your anniversary is coming up too.
Or the last Monday.
Yeah, Monday.
This past Monday. Gotcha.
Yeah, we're celebrating our anniversary on your show.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is the high point of our.
I'm sorry. Yeah, this is not the way you want to.
How appropriate.
Well, we're beginning 25 years on your show. How's that? That sounds better.
I like it. Okay.
I like it. So yeah, the first kind of foundational question to go right into it, lay the groundwork. Really important question. Kind of get an understanding is, because this book is all about marriage. Can someone help us understand the biblical definition of marriage? Yeah.
So let me give this a go. I think the Westminster Confession of Faith, by the way, is really helpful in its chapter on marriage. But a paraphrase of that summary of biblical teaching be something like marriage is a lifelong, exclusive, publicly recognized bond between one man and one woman. So I think I'd like to start there. And we
There you
just
go.
we just see that already in Genesis 2.
Mhm.
We see that in Jesus' review of marriage. We see that in New Testament discussions of marriage. That's the baseline. Yeah.
And
Got it.
and so what you're saying is it's from God. It's not this man-made thing that happened, you know, even like after the fall or anything like that. It's not a optional
predates the
man-made
fall.
kind of thing. Yeah, this is actually divinely given to us.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's very reassuring knowing that it is.
Yeah.
It's got a
Yeah.
good plan behind it, good purpose, good structure. You can expect blessing in it.
And it's significant that um, this is part of the creation order.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Which is why marriages need to be holy, but the marriage itself is not a sacrament. It's not something sacred. It's common. It's wonderful, but it's part of God's sort of common order for this world.
Yeah. So it's for Christians and non-Christians.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's good. Yeah. So now we have a kind of a definition of this. Goes to kind of how and why you wrote this book. So you talked about this in the introduction of your book. So why write on marriage? Because there's hundreds, if not thousands, of books on the same topic.
Oh.
And why write on it now?
Yeah. Fair enough. Shall I give it a go?
Yeah.
So we wrote the book for a few different reasons. First of all, we wanted a short book on marriage. We had intended it to be even shorter, but a lot of people don't finish marriage books because they're too long.
Yeah,
they get a little ways in, and they just don't get it done.
For those listening, it's about 120 pages, so it's pretty short.
Yeah, and it's not sort of 8 feet by 4 feet. It's like 7 inches by 5 inches or whatever.
Yeah.
We also wanted to have a book that frankly discussed kind of who we are, what we're capable of.
Not us in particular, just humans.
Yeah. Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Capable of sin, capable also.
This is key. Of growing in grace.
Yeah.
And so there's lots of books that talk about how, there's a lot of books that don't really address the problem of sin, but those that do address the problem of sin need to go on to discuss the joy of sanctification. God's grace is so extravagant that he not only saves us, he makes us holy. And he does that in marriage. And so we wanted to kind of add that element. Not only are we sinners, but we're being sanctified, and that's an essential part of marriage also. So that's the second thing. Third thing is we've been really blessed by thinking through a couple insights by an old Puritan named William Googe. Not everything he says is helpful.
I'm glad you said his name first before me. I was not sure how to say his name.
Yeah. So William Googe. And we talk about that insight, especially in chapters 3 on grace, and then 4 and 5 on men and women. Yeah.
Good. Yeah. And big aspect of marriage and even who God is love, right? So, and love being a commitment and big part of marriage, obviously. There's a lot of questions people would have when they're married and when they're not even married. Like, how should they approach and think about love? Because if we're really honest, within any marriage, love isn't always this euphoric feeling, all of this like often you could even say you don't always like the person every moment, but you always love the person. So so yeah, that euphoric feeling could like wane and fluctuate, but love should be kind of a constant thing. But looking for a little bit more of like how we approach thinking about love You know, should it be defined as commitment and part of that covenantal structure? Could you help us understand what love is within marriage?
Certainly, love is commitment, but it's more than that too. Certainly, the baseline, and I wouldn't want to evaluate our love for each other just based on our feelings. That said,
Yeah.
we pray for affectionate feelings for each other, and I'd even say the even the kind of love that sometimes is described in a pop song that's kind of fun, like we can even think about some of that for our marriage. It's kind of makes marriage fun, and we can pray for, at least I do. I don't, he doesn't listen to pop music, but the sense of,
Amen.
in the good sense of the fun, like I'm really interested in you, I'm excited about you. And yes, frankly, I don't feel that way all the time, but I can pray for that, and the Lord has honored that prayer. He delights to honor that prayer. He delights to give us affection for one another. Sometimes I'm like, I don't even know where that came from. And it's the Lord. And I
This is the first time I'm hearing that she does not constantly euphoric
Yeah.
affection towards me.
Yep.
But there we go. It happened.
Maybe you should read this book. Yeah, this will help you out a little bit.
Yeah,
good.
nothing to add to
but
that.
it's
That's great.
right. Pray for love for me too.
I
And
do.
even also physical attraction.
Yeah.
That matters in a marriage.
Yeah.
So we can, don't despair if it's sort of waxing and waning.
Yeah.
Pray for it, and do basic things to seek to be attractive to each other.
Maintenance.
Yeah, not
Mhm.
making it a huge deal, but
Yeah.
it is a real part of the picture. We're made in bodies.
Yeah.
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 That was
Yeah.
helpful with this because I've read other books on marriage, and they tend not to talk about the attraction aspect of it, or kind of like the physical aspect of it. Sometimes it seems like that spiritual is like really, really matters, although it's true, but you kind of do that to the exclusion of the physical. We forget we're embodied creatures who do things with our bodies.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. So marrying your best friend of the opposite sex kind of works, but for Christians, of course, there's more to say
Yeah.
about the Christian faith. But yeah, you also got to like the person, love the person in every way.
Yeah, exactly.
And if someone's just your buddy, that's not going to work.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
And through though you cover more topics in the book, we particularly appreciate your chapters aimed at women and then men. So there's obviously marriages between a man and a woman. So there's these kind of like different type of roles, and how scripture speaks to specifically the context of marriage and relationship between a man and woman. Could you help us understand and clarify maybe these different
Mhm.
contexts of between a
Yeah,
man
because
and a
they're
woman?
super countercultural, and if you talk about it
Yeah.
in the midst of like non-believers, it's like, what are you talking about?
Mm.
Well, I'm going to ask Emily to go first, but for what it's worth, when William Googe tried to address the same subject in the early 1600s, so more than 400 years ago, he got everybody mad in his congregation, which is why the preface to the book goes to great lengths to explain what he was trying to say and why it's a beautiful and a good thing. Both the men and the women were upset. So it's been countercultural for a long time.
Okay.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, it's more a battle between sort of not just the culture of the day, but the human pride, or the resistance to submit to ourselves, to humble ourselves. I'll speak to the words that the Bible uses. Wives are called to submit to their husbands. That's the hot button word. Doesn't that sound sort of embarrassing, demeaning? By the way, for what it's worth, I have a feisty personality. I'm not like
Sounds like someone I know.
naturally submissive, and I hopefully to God's glory. At the same time, all Christians are called to submit to one another.
Yep.
Out of reverence for Christ. We're called to serve one another. We're called to consider others better than ourselves. So a wife is simply excelling in this Christian grace in the marriage. This gives me something to focus on. It's also something that I see Jesus did. Not that he was married, but he came to serve, not to be served. And so that's how I'm trying to be Christ-like, and I get to do that as a wife in this relationship in a unique way. And then he gets to do his part.
So, and now here's where William Gouge's insight comes in. Both given access to Ephesians chapter 5. We're both allowed to hear the duties of one another. Now that I know that Emily's called to excel in this grace in a unique way, that's part of her role, even duty as a wife, what do I do with that information?
I'm assuming you don't say submit.
That's right. So the tendency
that one worked
in each of our hearts is to say, "Oh, great! The Lord let me know this, so I can remind her of her duty frequently as a way of blessing her."
Exactly.
Also, I can reduce all trouble in our marriage down to Emily not doing her duty, and so on. Like that's where a sinful heart goes. A gradually sanctified heart says, no, the Lord lets me hear Emily's duty, so I can think about her calling and then sweeten that task as much as possible.
Yeah.
How can I speak to her, listen to her, respect her in such a way that this becomes not a burden anymore? And Gooch goes so far as to say, anything that you know she really doesn't like doing, that's what, try not to ask that. Try and give her as much freedom and as much liberty as possible.
Yeah.
And then he flips that around and says, okay, your wife's supposed to love you. Just try and be lovable. Make it easy for her. Help her to
respect. I'm supposed to respect.
Good point.
Yeah.
It's lovable. To
Right.
Make it easy for you to.
Thank you.
But
So if she's supposed to respect me, I'm supposed to be respectable.
Exactly.
Not be like a whiny
and lovable too, but respectable as well.
Yeah. Lovable doesn't hurt. But some husbands are always complaining. And boy, that's a lot harder to respect. Some guys are lazy. That's hard to respect. Yeah. And the kind of list goes on. So I need to think, how can I make her task easier? And she's actively trying to make my task easier. Yeah. Sorry for the model, but you get the idea.
No, that's really good.
By the way, just a freebie, Googe sees this in the other dynamics as well. So children are to, you get into chapter 6, children are to honor their parents. By the way, what are dads told? Don't exasperate your children. So if that's their job, you've got to make it easier. And then it's the same thing going on with masters and servants. So the kind of employer-employee relationship of the day, brilliant. Once you get it, it sweetens a marriage and family life.
Yeah. And if you don't mind, one kind of sub question to that just kind of come up is, so for example, with your guys' marriage, everyone marriage, Chad, you're the head of the household as the husband, as the man. And how do we know that and also not say Emily is any less of value than you? I think a lot of the world thinks that, oh, you're saying that the wife is automatically not as important as the man.
Yeah, if she's not the head, what is she?
Yeah. Can you help explain that?
If I'm the head, she must be the tail. And like, if I'm the head, she's the body, which is a much more dignified and biblical way of thinking about that.
I think I'll say how I deal with it. By the way, I sort of come from a background more before I was a Christian that was very strongly maybe sympathetic to a bit of feminism, in the sense that I knew women had a lot of value, and I was not going to take any message otherwise, and then I become a Christian. I see it's in the Bible. It's that God made man and woman in his image. So I've got that solid, steady in my mind. And then I read, oh, okay, he's the head and, the wife's the body. Like, that's all right. That's not offensive to me. Somebody's got to be the head. Now, sometimes it is hard because it just goes against our sinful nature to want to follow. So I have a little image that helps me. Have you ever seen a picture of a two-headed snake? It's about one of the most repulsive things, but just the two heads working in different ways. I'm like, I don't want to be that second head. And the image I like much better is Simone Biles, the amazing gymnast. That she's got a head that's got to be focused, and the body works in complete coordination with the head. And together, she does this magnificent gymnastics to God's glory. And I'm hoping that as we follow God's design for marriage, that we will serve to God's glory. And you wouldn't want a head without a body, and you don't want a body without a head.
That makes a lot of sense, pointing towards how marriage points to, how Jesus relates to the church, him being the head and the church being the body. Cool.
Yeah.
So this is not, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, go for it.
This is all in the context of Christ giving for his bride, right? And so there's that dynamic too. This is not in the abstract. This, I think John Stott says something to the effect of, she's to submit to, oh shoot, I forget. It's in the book.
Oh,
You guys read the book, you'll know what he's talking about.
Good teaser.
Knows the quote.
Yeah. If you read the book, you'll know what he's saying.
Yeah, that's right.
So with this, what we're talking about, you've talked about kind of the cultural struggles, some of the hardships, and it's hard to take some of this in. But I'm also assuming it's hard. It was hard or particularly hard for either one or both of you to write a specific chapter within this book, where it's like, oh, this is like, I struggle with, like, where you're like me trying to put myself in your body. Like I'm struggling with this. How can I write this chapter, telling other people to live like this? Was there a particularly hard chapter for you to write that kind of goes against the grain? And then what do you think you benefited most from when writing this book?
Okay, there's definitely a chapter which we thought, oh my goodness, if we write a marriage book, we have to discuss this subject, and we have 5 children. So
that chapter.
Yeah, that chapter.
That chapter that as soon as it was published, the kids, ooh, I want to read this chapter.
Yeah.
We'll call it Bedtime in Marriage. That's what the chapter is called. And, we, on the one level, we're very glad to write it because it needs to be talked about. I think when we were giving a Sunday school class on it, we split up. The guy, he taught the guys, I taught the women. And of course, the women were very shy and quiet. I'm like, come on, you got to talk about this because you're not going to talk about it for another 20 years. Because they said that was the last time they had a Sunday school on the topic. But so it's hard to talk about personal, intimate matters. We do so with discretion. That's appropriate. And yet we still need some encouragement in that area. I think so it's private, and yet we need encouragement. I think especially I take the approach of, the fruit of the Spirit. We want that in our intimate lives as well. And that's just a helpful, easy guide, but yet still provides some guidance.
Yes. So we spend a lot of time on 1 Corinthians 7, and we're just so thankful for the way in which God guides us in His Word in these difficult matters. Because on the one part, there is a rapidly disappearing Christian prudence in the past, prudishness rather, that would not discuss this at all. And then, of course, our culture is just obsessed with sex.
Yeah, so there's 2 poles for this, and how do you navigate that well?
Yeah, right. Well put. So that's what we worked on in this chapter, and we did test drive it a number of times. So Sunday school classes, asked other people to read it.
Yep.
We read it out loud, and so on.
Yeah.
And so we're very thankful that God's given us a direction on this matter as well.
Yeah. That's awesome.
So inevitably through the book, it was designed obviously for people that are married and people that are thinking about marriage, people that are planning to be married soon. But obviously we don't want to ignore a large part of the population that's single, especially very, very young people that aren't even really at the age of that's at their time of life and that things like that, or even older people that might feel discouraged that they were wondering why God never called them to marriage. So how might single people benefit from this book as well?
Yeah.
You want to go first?
No, you go.
I'd say a few ways. First of all, prayer is very important. God listens to us when we pray. The more we understand marriage as a single person, the better we can serve our friends who are married. We can pray for them better. We can also serve them better. We talk in our book a bit about how some singles really helped us. In serve in hospitality, for example. There's different ways they encourage us. So reading the book might give you some ideas if you're single, like, oh, how can I help my friends who are married? And so there's some ideas in that. I think it can also give a positive picture of marriage. Some of us have absorbed in different ways some negative views of marriage, and it can give some positive ideas of what we might be looking for in a spouse, and even more important, what kind of spouse we'd like to be someday.
Yeah. And our second chapter puts marriage in its fourfold state in redemptive history. And there are also important takeaways there for thinking about marriage as a single person.
I think especially that it's really not everything. There's some people who talk about marriage like it really, if you're not married, you're missing out on something essential. No, let's remember, you have Jesus, you have everything, and his grace is sufficient, and he has a calling for each one of us in different stages of our lives. And in the end, we're not going to be married in heaven. We're all married to Jesus, and that's the one perfect marriage that we're, and any other marriage is just a marriage along the way. So let's not make too big a deal of it, even while it is important.
Yeah. Nick, I think there's a question that Val had that I think is pertinent for what they just said.
Well, yeah. And
Val's
it's
his
a
wife,
good
sorry.
question that you
I'm
brought up.
Not just some random girl who taught to us, but yeah, his wife.
No, there's even a section in the book. It talks about what is marriage going to look like in the new creation, knowing Christ and the bride is the church. But practically, or so we could wrap our minds around it, how is marriage going to look in the new creation? Even with between our spouses that we'll see.
So there's a lot that we don't know, and often what Jesus says, in heaven, we're going to be like the angels. There's neither giving, and there's no marriage nor giving in marriage. And we just think, oh my goodness, that's one of these sort of elite truths for like super spiritual believers. Let's not really talk about that because it's hard. Anyone who's happily married doesn't want to think about that. So a couple things just practically. First, there are people in really unhappy marriages. There are people who are married to unbelievers. There are people who have been married more than once for different reasons. Needless to say, all those situations would be quite complicated if everyone stayed married in heaven. But much more importantly than that, we don't pretend to offer sort of the definitive answer on what heaven looks like for married people, but we do believe that Jesus Christ will be the groom that we aspire towards, that we always that will fulfill our every desire, and that knowing God, seeing God will be kind of an all-encompassing joy that will not leave us saying, yeah, but. It's because we don't really know God like we could, and arguably like we should, and definitely like we will one day know him, that just seems like a little unsatisfying. But everything in Scripture leads us towards the conclusion that if we really know God, who he is, as he is, and as we will one day see him and know him, we won't be saying, well, heaven's a disappointment, or I'm really missing, intimate time with my wife, or something like that. So we don't pretend to have all the answers, but we want to reckon with what Jesus is saying.
And you don't need all the answers to still find encouragement and find practical application.
But I mean, we say a lot more in that chapter. It really is important to think that through, and not to just say, okay, that's for super spiritual Christians to think through.
Well, and it's realistic to think that our relationships to each other might even will be perfected in heaven as well.
So, we're not going to fight. We're not going to struggle. We won't be married, but there's going to be no strife. We'll be married to the perfect groomsman who will not let us down. So as we
that
go for it.
Him. I just want to say that frees him. He doesn't have to be the perfect husband. Because I'm going to have the perfect husband in heaven.
She's going to compare.
I'm giving it the old college try. To be clear. When I fail, it's not utter despair. This is not all she ever gets. She's very thankful for that.
Little pictures here and there, but the full picture is coming, and that's awesome. I think that leads us well to our conclusion. So as we end this, and we've talked about every marriage has struggles. There's really high points, there's really low points, just practically speaking. And there are probably people listening right now who are struggling, or like, I'm in a bad marriage. I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to. Or those who are in a good marriage is like, well, things are going to get better. How are things going to get better than this? So what gospel hope or encouragement would you give to those who are thinking both ways? Like, man, this marriage is rough, or man, marriage gets better than this.
So why don't I deal? This is totally unfair, but why don't I deal with the rough marriage part of the question? I mean, of course, when we even begin to try and answer a question like that, difficult marriages are on a spectrum all the way from the point of complete dissolution and disaster to, we just had an argument about over dinner. So we can't address everything on that spectrum, but when we're thinking about, let's say, a marriage that's struggling, one of the things we recommend in the book is that that you don't ignore the problem, but B, that you not endlessly sort of sit down to analyze the problem. There are ways in which over-analysis of a situation or a dynamic can be smothering. And sometimes what a couple needs to do is to go out and do something productive together, to share in some other purpose other than just their marriage improvement. Maybe it's going to a homeless shelter. Maybe it's having someone over for dinner. There are things in this in life other than our marriage. And when together we have a shared purpose, and we do something together, that often ends up helping the marriage a lot. And so, maybe you need another round of marriage counseling.
But maybe not.
But maybe you just need to go do something productive.
Get out more,
Maybe the life of kind of like Netflix and Saturday dates.
Is that kind of hits hard for me.
So,
absolutely.
So and then the marriages that are good and get better. How well? I pray for ideas, and I'd say take some risks in the sense of maybe saying more affectionate things to your spouse, or sometimes at least I think that feels a little more vulnerable. But if you think about marriage and the purpose and that God's designed it, maybe you don't have to feel I think some people might just sort of feel like they're living in a small box, and to know God allows us to express love and affection and grow in that in wonderful ways. So I would encourage people to be praying for that, and expect to grow.
That's good. Yeah, I think it's encouraging. You guys kind of talk about this at the end of the book as well, and it's kind of strewn throughout the book. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's anything you guys want to end with, anything that we didn't catch, any points from the book that you guys wanted to talk on, and if not, we'll end it right here.
I have one thing, just to say, a sense of humor goes a long way. So I'd say cultivate it and have fun. Have fun in your marriage.
I pray for that when I'm on a kind of a grumpy streak.
Uh-huh.
I just say, Lord, give me a sense of humor, because I can just see problems everywhere. And once you get there, and once you're in that place, you're just constantly wanting to correct, tinker, tweak, fix, rebuke. Just so corrosive in marriage and family life.
Yeah, and hopefully laugh at yourself. Be ready to laugh at yourself.
Oh yes. Just like no one should ever enter ministry if they have no ability to laugh at themselves. They're going to struggle if people take themselves really seriously.
Yeah.
So I appreciate Emily's thought. I would just say marriage is part of a larger community. Yes, I believe in monogamy. We ourselves have been so blessed by our church families in our marriage, by divorced and single people coming to us and just saying, you guys need a date. I have my calendar right here. I'm not leaving you until you pull out your calendar.
Yeah, that was an awesome little story that you guys put in the book.
Yeah. And we had this amazing single woman who was our friend who just knew how busy we could be some days, and she would show up on a Sunday and just kind of knock on the door, stroll right in, and say, "I'm here to do your dishes." She'd do our dishes, and she'd say, "Have a good night," and walk out. Dedicated our book to the singles and the couples in our lives who have been so helpful in our marriage, especially to Ian and Joan Hamilton, incredibly sacrificial pastor and his wife in England, now Scotland, and to a wonderful woman named Berta Badenoch, who just found ways to love us and enable our marriage just by being a friend.
And we had another single woman who often volunteered too.
Oh,
for
yes.
us.
Yes.
So we were really blessed. We were really blessed.
Yeah.
And we're very thankful. And I do encourage people. I already mentioned it, but I'll say it again. Pray even for little things every day. Like I pray for him as a husband. I pray for him on one day, another day of the week. I'll pray for him as a father, another day of the week as a writer. But it doesn't have to be all in one day. Just spread it out. Keep doing it.
If I may, there's a part of your book that really helped me realize something too, is just while you're being married, it's helped sanctifying both of you. You're trying to both grow towards Christ together. And I think if I'm really honest, like being married is humbling. Like it's constantly sacrificing and serving and, constantly just, putting myself aside, my own interests aside, and serving her. It's very humbling being married, but it's growth. I feel growth.
But also, if you think about it, you could, over the years, just keep serving strangers and you wouldn't really see the impact over time. At least this, you can see the impact, not maybe day to day, but over time, you get to see the relationship develop. So it's a wonderful gift that God has. Lord willing, the relationship lasts a long time.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, thank you both so much for writing this, for putting down insights. And I know it's been a few decades, 10, 20 years of marriage counseling and Sunday school classes and all that stuff, and bringing all that wisdom of God's word and kind of practical application into this. And it was really helpful for me. It's to be honest, it's humbling knowing like there's a lot of stuff in the book I don't do, and it's no, we can grow in this. This is something that we're not told to, like, you have to get it right when you start. It's humbling, yeah, to know that there's a lot of stuff we still have to work on. Yeah, but thank you so much for writing this book. It was, like I said, it was humbling, but it's also really, really, really encouraging reading this. And I hope others pick this up and are encouraged with their spouses, or to pray for those who are married, or pray for themselves to once they are married, if they get married, to be a better husband or better wife, whatever it may be. But yeah, thank you guys so much for coming on and talking about your book.
Thank you, Nick and Peter. And to be sure, we just love it when we're so grateful for all the people who pray that we'll put into practice the things that we write about.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, well, thank you guys so much.
Yeah.
Thanks, Chad and Emily. Yep.